Media fact-checker. Donald Trump's perceived hubris and misjudgments in a US-led war on Iran's military assets. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump reportedly predicted the US-Israeli assault on Iran would be over in 4 days, according to Alessia Russo, Brookings Institution, and a credible expert. A classified National Intelligence Council report warned that a large-scale US assault on Iran would be unlikely to oust the Islamic Republic's military and clerical establishment. Iran launched thousands of missiles and drones at Arab neighbors in the Gulf and attacked Israel during the conflict. Trump acknowledged the risk of Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz but claimed Tehran would likely capitulate before doing so. Iran's navy was significantly larger than Trump expected, according to both sources. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources as they are nearly identical in content and phrasing. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Leigh Ryswyk becomes first openly gay AFL player past or present. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Leigh Ryswyk is the first past or present AFL player to come out as gay. Ryswyk played one AFL match for the Brisbane Lions in 2005 against Fremantle at Subiaco Oval. Ryswyk suffered a quad injury during his 2005 AFL debut and was delisted at the end of the season. Ryswyk played 226 matches for North Adelaide in the SANFL and was later inducted into the Queensland Football Hall of Fame. Ryswyk came out publicly during an interview on Melbourne radio station Joy 94.9's GayFL program. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between sources on verifiable facts. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's medal haul at the 2024 World Athletics Indoor Championships in Poland. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Jessica Hull won silver in the women's 1x500m at the World Athletics Indoor Championships in Poland. Jessica Hull set a new Australian and Oceanian indoor record of 3 minutes and 59.45 seconds in the 1x500m. Jessica Hull previously held an Australian Oceanian record of 4 minutes and 1.19 seconds in the 1x500m. Georgia Hunter-Bell won gold in the women's 1x500m with a time of 3 minutes and 58.53 seconds, 2026 world best. Jessica Hull also won bronze in the 3x000m the day before the 1x500m final. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC mentions Hayley Kitching's time, 2 minutes and 0.50 seconds, and Keely Hodgkinson's time, 1 minute and 55.30 seconds, in the women's 800-meter, but The Guardian does not mention these details at all. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. 2 teenagers die after motorbike crash with bus on Sydney's restricted transitway. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 2 teenage boys, 15-year-old rider and 14-year-old passenger, died after a motorbike collision with a bus on the Liverpool Parramatta Transitway, T-Way, near Bosley Park, Sydney, around 7:10 p.m. on Monday. The motorbike became wedged under the bus at Restwell Road, Bosley Park, with no injuries to bus passengers but the 48-year-old driver taken to hospital for mandatory testing. Fairfield City Council Mayor Frank Carbone has repeatedly called for stricter enforcement of the T-Way's restrictions on motorbikes and e-bikes, citing recent near-misses and incidents. Police are investigating the crash and have asked for witnesses, including dashcam footage or CCTV, to come forward. The crash occurred on the Liverpool Parramatta Transitway, a dedicated bus and emergency vehicle route, near Weller Street, about 100 metres from Restwell Road. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports the boys were riding a petrol trail bike, while SMH initially reported the same but later aligned with Mayor Carbone's claim that the accident involved e-bikes, though police have not confirmed this. ABC does not mention the NSW government's planned age or usage limits for e-bikes, while SMH highlights this as part of broader e-bike controversy. ABC emphasizes Mayor Carbone's letter to Premier Minns this month without response, while SMH focuses more on his social media criticism and lack of government action. This story was covered by ABC News and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia Women's ODI Series win over West Indies in St Kitts. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Australia won the first women's ODI against West Indies by 103 runs in St Kitts, 341 all-out vs 238-8. Phoebe Litchfield top-scored for Australia with 77 runs in the first innings. Australia's total of 341 is a record women's ODI team score in the Caribbean. Stephanie Taylor scored her first ODI century since 2021 with 105 not out, 129 balls, 10 fours, 1 6. Georgia Wareham was named player of the match with 42 runs, 21 balls, and took 1 for 39 from 10 overs. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states the second ODI is on Sunday, but ABC says it is on Monday. ABC does not mention the 75-run opening stand between Volume 50 and Litchfield, which The Guardian highlights. The Guardian specifies Taylor's century boundary was off Georgia Wareham in the 47th over, while ABC omits this detail. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Massive theft of Nestlé's KitKat shipment in Europe before Easter. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A truck carrying 413,793 units of KitKat's new chocolate range, almost equals 12 tons, was stolen in transit in Europe on the 26th of March, 2024. The shipment left a factory in central Italy and was en route to Poland when the theft occurred. Nestlé confirmed the theft to AFP and is investigating with local authorities and supply chain partners. The stolen KitKats were part of the Formula One line, designed to resemble race cars, following KitKat's 2023 F1 partnership. Nestlé warned stolen bars could enter unofficial markets and can be traced via batch codes on individual bars. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian mentions the theft occurred on the 26th of March, but Newscomiu does not specify the exact date, only last week. The Guardian references The Athletic for the Formula One line details, while Newscomiu does not attribute this information. Newscomiu explicitly states the shortage would only impact Europe, but The Guardian does not clarify regional scope beyond the truck's route. This story was covered by The Guardian and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Drug-affected driver sentenced for hitting schoolboys, sues government over arrest. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Taylor Hazel, 32, pleaded guilty to 2 counts of culpable driving causing grievous bodily harm to 2 schoolboys, aged 14 and 15, outside St Edmunds College, Canberra, on March 28, 2023. Hazel was sentenced to 13 years and 2 months in prison with a non-parole period of 9 years by Act Supreme Court Judge John Burns on March 28, 2024. Hazel stole a green Commodore from a childcare centre in Sutton, NSW, and had an 8-year-old girl inside before letting her out. Hazel crashed the stolen car outside Manuka shops after hitting the boys on Canberra Avenue in Griffith, ACT. Hazel was high on drugs and drove erratically, crossing median strips and overtaking cars at speed before the incident. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the 2 sources. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's food and economic crisis from Middle East conflict and supply chain disruptions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Michael Hampson, Norco CEO, warned the Middle East conflict fallout would make COVID look like a tea party, stating we won't be worried about running out of toilet paper, we'll be worried about not having food, both sources. Fertilizer costs have doubled for Australian farmers due to the conflict, both sources. Diesel shortages threaten key planting and harvesting windows for Australian farmers, both sources. Milk bottle production is dependent on fossil fuel resins, risking supply chain interruptions, both sources. Transport costs from packing sheds to supermarkets have doubled, both sources. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscomer mentions petrol prices climbing towards $3.4 per litre, while Guardian does not provide a specific petrol price figure. Newscomer states 37 critical drugs are in short supply, but Guardian does not mention this specific number. Newscomer highlights the Reserve Bank's 0.25% interest rate hike, while Guardian does not mention this detail. This story was covered by The Guardian and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. AFL introduces new stringent illicit drug policy for players with mandatory hair testing. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The AFL and AFLW players will now undergo hair testing for illicit drugs twice per year under a new policy. The new policy replaces the previous 3 strikes model and is described as the most stringent in Australian sport by AFL CEO Andrew Dillon. Players who test positive 3 or more times will be assessed by a newly formed joint IDP committee, which includes club president, CEO, and football manager. The AFL confirmed the policy will cost more than the previous one but will be fully funded by the AFL itself. Players barred from playing under the policy will continue to be paid by their clubs. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the new policy introduces a suspension range of 2 to 4 matches for public use of illicit drugs, while The Guardian does not mention this specific suspension range. ABC explicitly mentions a $250,000 fine for clubs breaching confidentiality of positive tests, though The Guardian does not reference this fine directly. The Guardian highlights that the policy was reviewed by consultancy 360 Edge and explicitly states it recommended a harm reduction approach, while ABC does not mention this consultancy or recommendation. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US-Iran tensions and Trump's 48-hour deadline for Iran strikes in early 2020. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump issued a 48-hour deadline for bombing Iran's electricity infrastructure on a Saturday morning, setting a decision point by Monday US time when financial markets opened. Trump's threat to attack Iran's electricity infrastructure would have risked Iranian retaliation against Gulf states' energy infrastructure and desalination plants. The price of Brent crude oil dropped 11% immediately after Trump's backdown, falling to $100 per barrel, down from $141 before the deadline. The S&P 500 and Dow Jones Industrial Average each rose over 1% on Monday after Trump's decision to delay strikes. Iran's Speaker of Parliament, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, a former IRGC commander, tweeted that no negotiations had occurred with the US and accused Western media of spreading fake news. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources as they are nearly identical in content and phrasing. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US-Iran escalation over Strait of Hormuz and energy infrastructure threats in Middle East war. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump gave Iran a 48-hour deadline, until 23:44 Greenwich Mean Time on March 25, to fully reopen the Strait of Hormuz without threat, or face US strikes on Iran's power plants, posting on Truth Social on March 24, 2026. Iran's parliament speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf stated that if Iran's power plants and infrastructure are targeted, vital infrastructure as well as energy and oil infrastructure across the entire region will be considered legitimate targets and will be irreversibly destroyed, according to statements on March 24 to 25, 2026. Iran's Military Operational Command Qatem Al-Anbiya warned that if the US targets Iran's power plants, the Strait of Hormuz will be completely closed and will not reopen until Iran's destroyed power plants are rebuilt, as reported on March 24 to 25, 2026. Iran's missiles struck southern Israeli cities Dimona and Orod on March 24 to 25, injuring approximately 200 people, including children, and damaging buildings, with Israeli air defenses failing to intercept some strikes, confirmed by multiple sources. The Strait of Hormuz remains effectively closed to vessels linked to Iran's enemies, US and Israel, as per Ali Mousavi, Iran's representative to the International Maritime Organization, on March 24 to 25, 2026. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian, Steve Reed, denied Iran was targeting Europe, stating he was not aware of any assessment that Iran intended to strike European capitals, while the Israeli military chief Eyal Zami claimed Iran's missiles had a range reaching Berlin, Paris, or Berlin, implying a direct threat to Europe. ABC reported that Lebanese President Joseph Aoun accused Israel of laying the groundwork for an invasion in Lebanon's south, while Israel's military stated it was targeting Hezbollah infrastructure to contain the threat in the south and eliminate it, framing the strikes as defensive rather than preparatory for an invasion. The Guardian, Steve Reed, stated Trump was speaking for himself when threatening to obliterate Iran's power plants, while other sources, e.g., Newskamau, SMH, presented the threat as an official US administration stance without qualifying it as Trump's personal opinion. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Qantas Jetstar reduces NZ flights due to rising jet fuel prices amid global fuel crisis. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Jetstar is reducing 12% of flights between Auckland and Sydney, and Auckland and Brisbane from May due to rising jet fuel prices. Jetstar has contacted affected passengers, offering most same-day travel alternatives. Air New Zealand also reduced flights earlier this month, March 16 to May 3, citing unprecedented volatility in jet fuel prices due to the Middle East conflict. Vietnam Airlines plans to cancel 20-plus domestic flights weekly and suspend 7 domestic routes starting next month due to jet fuel shortages. The Australian government lowered the technical threshold for diesel, flashpoint, from 61.5C to 60.5C to increase supply options. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports Air New Zealand reduced 5% of its total schedule, while Newskamau does not specify the percentage but focuses on timing, March 16 to May 3, without a direct percentage comparison. Newskamau claims the government has no mechanism for addressing fuel shortages via Bowen's comments, while ABC does not explicitly contradict this but focuses on government actions, e.g., flashpoint adjustment. ABC attributes the Philippines president's warning to Bloomberg News, while Newskamau does not mention this source or detail the warning's phrasing. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Coroner's inquest into influencers' free birth death and birthkeepers' refusal to testify. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Stacey Warner-Key, 30, died from a postpartum hemorrhage and cardiac arrest after a free birth at home on September 29, 2025 in Seaford, Melbourne. Emily Lau, known as the authentic birthkeeper, was present during Stacey Warner-Key's home birth and when 000 was called at 4:13 a.m. Stacey Warner-Key's husband Nathan Warner-Key posted a heartbreaking Instagram announcement about her death on October 2025. Emily Lau has refused to provide a statement to the coroner's inquest, citing privilege against self-incrimination. Coroner Therese McCarthy is proposing an inquest to run between June 15 to 19, 2026, examining whether earlier medical intervention could have saved Stacey Warnocky. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the inquest was adjourned until June, unspecified date, while Newscomau specifies June 15 to 19, 2026. ABC refers to Emily Lal's ban as pending the outcome of an investigation without a deadline, but Newscomau clarifies the ban remains until April 7, 2026. ABC does not mention the exact date of the directions hearing, Tuesday morning, while Newscomau includes this detail. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Disappearance of 4-year-old Gus Lamont from South Australian Outback Station. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Gus Lamont was last seen on September 27, 2025, at Oak Park Station near Yunta, South Australia, around 5 p.m. playing on a mound of dirt. His disappearance was reported to police approximately 3 hours later by his grandmother, Josie Murray, on October 1, 2025. The 60,000-hectare Oak Park Station was searched extensively by police, volunteers, drones, and Aboriginal trackers, with no evidence found. In February 2026, police declared Gus's disappearance a major crime and ruled out theories that he wandered off or was abducted. Police identified a resident of Oak Park Station as a suspect in February 2026, though no arrests have been made. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscomau states police ruled out Gus wandering off or being abducted in February 2026, while ABC reports police initially considered both theories before shifting focus. Newscomau mentions police returned to the property in March 2026 after rainfall, but ABC does not reference this specific timing for searches. ABC notes police prepared Gus's family for the worst early in the investigation, but Newscomau does not explicitly state this preparation timeline. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia faces fuel shortages and supply crisis amid relaxed diesel standards and geopolitical disruptions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Australia temporarily lowered diesel standards, flashpoint from 61.5 degrees Celsius to 60.5 degrees Celsius, for 6 months to increase supply options from international sources like the US, Canada, and Europe, ABC, Guardian 1, Guardian 2. Hundreds of service stations across Australia are experiencing fuel shortages, with at least 164 NSW stations without diesel and 289 without at least one fuel type, ABC, Guardian 1, Guardian 2. 6 fuel shipments scheduled for April were cancelled, with some replaced by alternate sources, ABC, Guardian 2. Energy Minister Chris Bowen released 20% of Australia's fuel reserve to address shortages, ABC. In Queensland, 55 stations lack diesel and 35 lack unleaded petrol, ABC, Guardian 1. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports 164 NSW stations lack diesel, while Guardian 3 states Bowen mentioned 37 NSW stations lacked petrol, no direct diesel shortage number provided. Guardian 1 states Asian refiners have cut production by over 10%, while Guardian 3 does not provide a specific percentage cut but mentions potential 20% plus declines in production. ABC claims 289 NSW stations lack at least one fuel type, while Guardian 1 states 289 NSW stations lack at least one fuel type but does not specify the exact number of stations without diesel separately. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. ABC staff strike over rejected pay offer and conditions dispute. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. More than 75% of ABC staff, 3,398 out of 4,500, voted on the enterprise agreement, with 60% voting no to the latest pay offer, Articles 1, 2, 4. The rejected pay offer included a 3.5% pay rise in the first year and 3.25% in the second and third years, totaling 10% over 3 years, Articles 1, 2, 4, 5. The offer also included a one-off $1,000 payment for ongoing and fixed-term staff, excluding casuals, Articles 1, 2, 4. The strike began at 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time on Wednesday, the 11th of September, 2024, and lasted 24 hours, disrupting flagship programs like 7.30 a.m., p.m., and Radio National Breakfast, Articles 2, 4, 5. Unions representing striking staff are the Media, Entertainment and Arts Alliance, MEAA, and the Community and Public Sector Union, CPSU, Articles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states the 2006 strike was caused by major interruption to TV and radio services, while ABC News, Article 2, does not mention this context for the 2006 strike. The Guardian reports the 2022-23 annual report estimated ABC's audience reach at 65% of Australia's population, but this detail is not repeated in any other source's consensus facts. Article 3, Newscomore, states only 40% of staff who voted supported the pay agreement, while other sources, e.g., Article 4, clarify that 60% voted no out of those who participated, not the overall vote. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia-EU Free Trade Agreement, Farmers' Criticism versus Government Support. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Australia-EU Free Trade Agreement was finalised after 8 years of negotiations between Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. The deal removes tariffs from 97.8% of Australian goods exported to the EU, including produce, dairy, machinery, and textiles. Australian beef exporters will gain 35,000 tonnes per year to the EU market, a 700% boost, while sheep meat exporters will get 31,000 tonnes per year, a 5-fold increase. The agreement was announced on Tuesday, with the EU reportedly not seeking to restart talks if negotiations failed. The National Farmers Federation, NFF, President Hamish McIntyre criticised the deal, calling it a long-term generational agreement with very low volumes for decades. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscommer reports Trade Minister Farrell claimed 95% of the Australian industry supports this agreement, but ABC does not provide any supporting data or quotes to confirm this claim. Newscommer states the cattle industry wanted 3 things and we got that, while ABC reports farmers like Gary Edwards from Cattle Australia call the quotas pathetic and not reached for 10 years. Newscommer mentions the EU was not looking to restart talks if negotiations failed, per Newswire, but ABC does not reference this specific detail. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Gold Coast Mayor Tom Tate's Mar-a-Lago visit and Trump Tower development ethics controversy. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Gold Coast Mayor Tom Tate received gifts from the Trump Organization during a February 2024 visit to Mar-a-Lago, including meals, accommodation, and airport transfers valued over $500. The Trump Organization's gifts to CR Tate were disclosed in his latest Register of Interests, which requires declarations of gifts valued at $500 or more. Tate met with US President Donald Trump and Eric Trump at Mar-a-Lago between February 12 and February 14, 2024, during a broader overseas trip. The Trump Organization signed a $1.5 billion deal with Australian developer Altus Property Group, CEO David Young, for a Trump-branded tower in Surfers Paradise, Gold Coast, days after Tate's visit. The proposed 91-story Trump Tower in Surfers Paradise would include a 6-star resort hotel, 270 luxury apartments, a retail plaza, and a beach club, and developers claim it will be Australia's tallest building. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the Trump Organization paid for Tate's flights, while Article 2 notes the exact cost of flights was yet to be revealed and ratepayers paid for them. Article 1 does not mention Tate's attendance at the Day USA trade event in Los Angeles, while Article 2 explicitly states he attended this event during his US trip. Article 1 does not reference Jeffrey Watson SC's legal opinion that Tate must exclude himself from the Trump Tower vote, while Article 2 includes this opinion in detail. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. AFL umpire error in Geelong vs Adelaide match leads to review process scrutiny. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The AFL admitted a last disposal free kick was incorrectly awarded to Geelong cat Tom Atkins over Adelaide Zach Taylor in the fourth quarter of the match at Cardinia Park on Thursday night, 2024. The AFL Review Centre, ARC, did not have time to intervene before the ball came back into play, meaning the decision could not be overturned in time. Geelong won the match 9.14-68 to 9.6-60 over Adelaide, an 8-point margin, despite Adelaide dominating territory with 22 more inside 50s. Tom Atkins kicked the ball out of bounds in a contest with Zach Taylor on the wing, but umpires awarded the free kick to Geelong after Atkins convinced them of possession. The AFL has previously admitted 5 late umpiring mistakes against Adelaide in close losses across 4 seasons. But not all outlets told the same story. The ABC reports the AFL will look at its late in-game process and the ability to potentially hold play, while The Age does not mention this specific commitment from the AFL. The Age includes a quote from David King calling Atkins' behaviour stooging, which is not present in the ABC article. The ABC does not mention the historical context of Geelong's 15-16 win record when leading at three-quarter time, highlighted in The Age. This story was covered by ABC News and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Northern Territory flooding from ex-tropical Cyclone Narelle and ongoing riverine threats in March 2026. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Ex-tropical Cyclone Narelle passed over the Northern Territory on March 2026, causing widespread flooding and heavy rainfall across the top end, ABC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The Katherine River peaked at 19.2 meters on March 7, 2026, marking Katherine's worst flooding in nearly 30 years, ABC 1, 6. The Katherine River was expected to reach the major flood level of 17.5 meters on Wednesday afternoon, March 2026, before receding by Thursday morning, ABC 2, 5, 6. Daly River now EU remains under prolonged major flooding, with river levels expected to stay above the major flood level for the remainder of March 2026, ABC 1, 2, 4, 5. Adelaide River experienced major flooding on March 2026, with homes inundated and a boil water alert issued for multiple communities, ABC 1, 3, 4, 5. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the Katherine River peaked just below the 17.5-meter major flood level on Thursday morning, while Article 6 states the river was expected to peak at 17.5 meters on Wednesday afternoon, ABC 1 vs ABC 6. Article 1 says the Katherine River was 1.6 meters below the March 7th peak, 19.2 m, on Thursday morning, while Article 6 states the river was at 15.81 meters on Tuesday afternoon, ABC 1 vs ABC 6. Article 2 says the Katherine River was expected to exceed the moderate flood level, 16.5 m, early Wednesday morning, while Article 6 says the river was expected to reach the major flood level, 17.5 m, on Wednesday afternoon, ABC 2 vs ABC 6. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. TGA proposes reforms to Australian sunscreen regulations amid SPF testing controversies. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Therapeutic Goods Administration, TGA, proposed sweeping reforms to Australian sunscreen regulations in response to concerns about SPF protection claims. Choice tested 20 popular SPF 50 and SPF 50 Plus sunscreens in June 2023 and found 16 did not meet their advertised SPF claims, with results ranging from SPF 4 to SPF 43 instead of SPF 50 Plus. More than a dozen sunscreens have been pulled from shelves or paused from supply in Australia over SPF concerns, including Banana Boat Baby's Ink Sunscreen Lotion, tested at SPF 28, and Kohl's SPF 50 Plus Sunscreen Ultra Tube, tested at SPF 43. Australia has the highest rates of skin cancer and melanoma globally, with around 2,000 deaths annually, according to the TGA. The TGA's proposed reforms include changes to SPF testing requirements, oversight of testing laboratories, and potential replacement of SPF numbers with low, medium, high, and very high ratings. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1, ABC, states the TGA proposed replacing SPF numbers with low, medium, high, and very high ratings, while Article 3, Newscomau, does not explicitly mention this proposal as a primary focus beyond simplifying labels. Article 2, ABC, quotes Professor Tony Lawler saying the TGA had not been sitting on our hands, but does not provide specific examples of prior regulatory action beyond recalls, whereas Article 1, ABC, lists 7 specific sunscreens tested by Choice that fell short of claims. Article 3, Newscomau, emphasizes the TGA's investigation into Ultraviolet's SPF 4 result and its Instagram post about testing costs, but this detail is not mentioned in the ABC articles. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Massive anti-Trump protests across US states, including West Virginia, amid midterm concerns. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Over 3,200 coordinated No Kings protests were scheduled across all 50 US states on Saturday. Donald Trump won West Virginia in 2016, 2020, and 2024, including Jefferson County, Charlestown, and Berkeley County, Martinsburg. A Reuters Ipsos poll showed Trump's approval rating at 36%, with 62% disapproving of his performance. Protests occurred outside the historic Jefferson County Courthouse in Charlestown, West Virginia. Stephen Miller, Trump's deputy chief of staff, was a target of protests due to his role in the administration's immigration crackdown. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. F1 crash safety concerns and Kimi Antonelli's record-breaking performance at Japanese GP. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Oliver Bearman crashed at the 2024 Japanese Grand Prix after evading Franco Colapinto, suffering a 50G impact and limping away with only bruises. The crash occurred at Suzuka Circuit, specifically near Turn 13, Spoon Curve, where Bearman's Haas was traveling at 190 miles per hour when he hit the barriers. Bearman's closing speed with Colapinto was approximately 50 km per hour, or 50G impact force, caused by Bearman deploying boost while Colapinto's energy was depleted. Kimi Antonelli won the Japanese Grand Prix, becoming the youngest driver to ever lead the F1 Drivers' Championship after his second consecutive victory as a teenager. Antonelli dropped from pole position, 6th at start, to 6th place before recovering to win, with Oscar Piastri finishing 2nd and Charles Leclerc 3rd. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Bearman's impact was measured at 50G, while Guardian does not specify the exact G-force but focuses on the 50 km per hour closing speed. ABC describes Bearman's speed as 190 miles per hour at impact, but Guardian does not mention this exact speed figure. ABC emphasizes Mercedes' dominance in clean air but notes McLaren and Ferrari are narrowing the gap, while Guardian does not discuss Mercedes' overall performance. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Formula 1 Japanese Grand Prix 2026 qualifying and race analysis with focus on Mercedes' dominance and title race dynamics. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Kimi Antonelli secured pole position, 1 minute and 28.778 seconds, for the Japanese Grand Prix, 0.298 seconds ahead of teammate George Russell, who started second. Mercedes locked out the front row for the third consecutive race in 2026, Australia, China, Japan. Oscar Piastri qualified third fastest, 0.354s behind Antonelli, for McLaren, ahead of Charles Leclerc, fourth, and Lewis Hamilton, sixth. Max Verstappen failed to qualify for Q3, starting 11th after being 1.548s behind Antonelli in FP3 and describing his car as undrivable. Lando Norris qualified 5th for McLaren, while Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll were eliminated in Q1, starting from the back of the field. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC mentioned that Oscar Piastri qualified 5th in the previous two Grands Prix, Australia and China, but The Guardian and other sources do not mention this specific detail. The Guardian reported that Verstappen was 1.548s behind Antonelli in FP3, while ABC did not provide this specific FP3 timing comparison. ABC stated that Lando Norris lost significant time in practice due to car issues, but The Guardian did not specify the reason for Norris's slower practice times. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Football Australia schedules Matildas against low-ranked teams ahead of 2027 World Cup. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Matildas will play in a FIFA Series 2026 friendly tournament in Nairobi, Kenya, starting April 2024. Australia's next matches are against Malawi, FIFA rank 153, followed by either India, 67, or Kenya, 134. The Matildas lost 1-0 to Japan in the 2024 Asian Cup final on March 24, 2024. Football Australia's Executive Director Heather Garriock stated the team's options were limited in the April window due to other nations qualifying for major tournaments. FIFA announced the Matildas' participation in the Nairobi series on March 26, 2024. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Football Australia's focus is on playing top 15 opponents, while The Guardian implies the team's options were limited due to scheduling conflicts rather than a deliberate strategy. The Guardian suggests the April window is a calamity and wasting resources, while ABC frames it as a necessary preparation step despite limited options. ABC mentions Malawi's top strikers, Chawinga sisters, as a worthwhile challenge, but The Guardian does not highlight this aspect of the matchup. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Arsenal's 3-1 WSL win over Tottenham featuring Alessia Russo's hat-trick and league implications. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Arsenal defeated Tottenham Hotspur 3-1 in the Women's Super League at the Emirates Stadium on Saturday. Alessia Russo scored a hat-trick for Arsenal in the first half, including a goal from a corner in the 11th minute and another from a deflected shot at 45+2 minutes. Tottenham's goal came from a Frida Maanum own goal in the 29th minute. Arsenal's lineup included Daphne van Domselaar, Smilla Holmberg, Steph Catley, Frida Maanum, and Olivia Smith as starters, with Renee Sledgers making 5 changes. Tottenham's lineup featured Toko Koga and Micah Hameno as key players, replacing Julie Blackstad and Bethany England. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Arsenal had 10 attempts on target, 4 on target for Spurs, while Article 2 does not mention specific shot statistics. Article 1 lists Arsenal's formation as 4-2-3-1 with Kelly Smith as a midfielder, while Article 2 does not specify formation details. Article 1 mentions Arsenal's subs including Beth Mead, while Article 2 does not mention her as a sub. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media fact checker. Victorian public school teachers' first strike in 13 years over pay and conditions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Australian Education Union, AEU, is leading a 24-hour strike on Tuesday, the 23rd of October, 2024, involving 30,000 plus Victorian public school teachers, principals, and education support staff. The Fair Work Commission approved the strike after 98% of AEU members voted in favour, citing low pay and excessive workloads as key grievances. The AEU is seeking a 35% pay rise over 4 years, smaller class sizes, and improved mental health and classroom support, while the government offered 18.5%, 8% for teachers, 4% for staff, in April 2025 with annual 3% increases thereafter. Up to 500 public schools in Victoria are expected to be closed or significantly affected by the strike, with many offering limited supervision for students. Premier Jacinta Allen urged teachers not to strike, calling it disruptive for families, and stated schools would remain open with support from casual and retired teachers. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and ABC report that some principals advised parents to keep children home, but News Kamau states the state government website does not advise of any school closures in any region. The Guardian and ABC mention principals offering supervision only for emergency workers' children, while News Kamau does not mention this detail. The Guardian and ABC state the strike is the first in 13 years, but News Kamau states it is the first in more than a decade, 2013, which is inconsistent with the 13-year claim. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia warns Israel against occupying southern Lebanon amid escalating conflict with Hezbollah. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong warned Israel against occupying southern Lebanon in calls with Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar on March 2024. Israel's Defense Minister Israel Katz announced plans to create a security zone between the Israeli border, Blue Line, and the Litani River in southern Lebanon. Over 1,000 Lebanese civilians have been killed since Israel began striking Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, including over 100 children and 40 medics, Lebanon's health ministry figures. More than 1 million Lebanese civilians have been displaced due to the conflict in southern Lebanon. Australia has urged Australians in Lebanon to leave now if safe to do so due to the escalating violence. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC and News Kamau both report over 1,000 Lebanese deaths, but ABC specifies 1,000 plus, including 120 children and 40 medics, while News Kamau says 100 plus children without the 40 medics figure. The Guardian reports 15,000 Australians reside in Lebanon, while ABC does not specify this number but mentions urging Australians to leave. ABC and News Kamau both cite Smotrich's calls for annexing Lebanese territory, but only ABC explicitly states Smotrich was sanctioned by Australia for inciting violence and Palestinian abuses. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian government urges Fair Work Commission for minimum wage increase above inflation. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The federal government submitted to the Fair Work Commission requesting an economically sustainable real wage increase for minimum and award wage workers in 2025. 2.7 million Australians earn the national minimum wage or award wages, accounting for about a quarter of the workforce, 25%. The current minimum wage is $175.40 per week, higher than when the Albanese government took office in May 2022. The Fair Work Commission's 2024 minimum wage increase was 3.75%, and the 2025 increase was 3.5%. February 2025 Consumer Price Index, CPI, inflation was 3.7%, headline, or 3.3%, underlying, RBA's preferred measure. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports the Fair Work Commission's 2025 determination declared this inflationary episode is now over, but Newscomm does not mention this specific claim. ABC states the government has not sought a specific number for the wage increase, while Newscomm does not contradict this but omits the ambiguity detail about real increases. ABC highlights that Treasury's inflation projections of up to 5% could be conservative, but Newscomm does not reference this specific warning from Chalmers. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Daly Cherry-Evans' emotional return to Manly-Warringah at Brookvale Oval for the Roosters in 2026 NRL season. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Daly Cherry-Evans made his first appearance for the Roosters at Brookvale Oval after leaving Manly-Warringah in the off-season. The match took place on a stormy night with lightning, heavy rain, and power cuts at Brookvale Oval an hour before kick-off. Manly-Warringah started the 2026 NRL season with a 0-3 record, all losses at Brookvale Oval. Cherry-Evans was booed by Manly fans during warm-ups, team introductions, and throughout the game. Cherry-Evans played a controlled, steady game for the Roosters, completing 22 20-second passes in wet conditions. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 and 2 both describe Cherry-Evans' missed tackles under pressure, but only Article 1 explicitly mentions a couple of missed tackles while Article 3 does not detail missed tackles. Article 1 and 2 mention the Cherries AW***** chant, but Article 3 does not mention the specific chant, only the booing. Article 1 and 2 state that Cherry-Evans completed 22 20-second passes, but only Article 1 explicitly mentions this in the context of wet conditions. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Air Canada CEO's English-only condolence video sparks linguistic rights controversy after deadly crash. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 2 pilots were killed in a collision between an Air Canada Express flight, Flight 8646, and a fire truck at New York's LaGuardia Airport on Sunday night, October 2024, exact date not specified but implied recent. The pilots killed were Antoine Forrest, 30, from Coteau-du-Lac, Quebec, and Mackenzie Gunther, 2023 graduate of Toronto's Seneca Polytechnic. Air Canada CEO Michael Rousseau released a 4-minute English-only condolence video on Monday, including only 2 French words, bonjour and merci. The CRJ 900 aircraft, operated by Jazz Aviation, an Air Canada regional partner, flew into LaGuardia from Montreal as Flight 8646 with 76 passengers and 4 crew members on board. The Runway Alert System, ASDEX, did not trigger before the crash because the fire truck lacked a transponder. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states Rousseau addressed the Montreal Chamber of Commerce in English in 2021, prompting protests, while Newscomm does not mention this incident. The Guardian reports Quebec Premier Legault explicitly demanded Rousseau's resignation if he doesn't speak French, but Newscomm does not include this quote. The Guardian highlights the Federal Languages Commissioner received nearly 800 complaints about the video, while Newscomm does not mention this detail. This story was covered by The Guardian and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. UK nurse Lucy Letby's 2015 to 2016 neonatal unit murder convictions and ongoing miscarriage of justice claims. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Lucy Letby was convicted in 2018 of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 7 more while working at the Qantas of Jetstar Hospital's neonatal unit between 2015 to 2016. She received 15 whole-life prison sentences, and the Court of Appeal refused her permission to appeal in 2023. Dr. Shu Lee, a Canadian neonatologist, led a panel of 14 experts who concluded in 2023 there was no evidence of murders or deliberate harm in the deaths of the babies. Letby's lawyer Mark MacDonald submitted an application to the Criminal Cases Review Commission, CCRC, in 2023 to revisit her case, supported by reports from 27 experts. Cheshire Constabulary conducted the original investigation and prosecution, with the Crown Prosecution Service, CPS, handling the charges. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 claims Cheshire Constabulary's statement accused critics of spreading misinformation, while Article 2 does not mention this specific phrasing or tone in the force's response. Article 1 states Cheshire Constabulary strongly refutes all the points made during the adjournment debate, but Article 2 does not reference this direct rebuttal of Davies's speech. Article 1 implies Davies's call for investigation documents was a new demand, while Article 2 does not explicitly state whether this was a novel request or part of prior advocacy. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Bill Cosby Civil Sexual Assault Trial Verdict and Damages Award. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Bill Cosby was found liable for drugging and sexually assaulting Donna Motzinger in 1972 by a California civil jury in 2024. Donna Motzinger was awarded $19.25 million in damages by the jury in the civil case against Cosby. Motzinger alleged Cosby drugged her with wine and pills, believed to be aspirin, in his limousine before she woke up raped in her home wearing only underwear. Cosby did not testify in the trial and his attorney plans to appeal the verdict. Cosby was previously convicted of sexual assault in 2018, Pennsylvania, but released in 2021 after a higher court overturned the conviction due to prosecutorial misconduct. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian says the jury deliberated for 3 days, while ABC states the jury deliberated for just over 1 day. The Guardian reports punitive damages were to be determined later on Monday, while ABC states the punitive damages phase started later in the week after the verdict. ABC claims Cosby's lawyers argued Motzinger freely admits that she has no idea what happened, but The Guardian does not mention this exact phrasing or context. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Nepal's former PM KP Sharma Oli arrested over alleged role in deadly Gen Z protests crackdown. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. KP Sharma Oli and former Home Affairs Minister Ramesh Lekak were arrested in Kathmandu on Saturday over alleged involvement in the deaths of protesters during the Gen Z uprising last year. The protests began in September 2023 in response to a social media ban and widespread corruption allegations, leading to nationwide unrest and the collapse of Oli's government. At least 19 protesters were killed when police opened fire during the protests, with additional deaths reported as government offices were set ablaze. Nepal's new Prime Minister Balendra Shah, known as Balin, was sworn in less than 24 hours before the arrests, campaigning on justice for the killings and anti-corruption. A government-backed investigation report recommended 10 years in prison for Oli, Lekak, and the former police chief for their alleged role in the crackdown. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Oli was taken to a hospital after his arrest due to kidney issues, but SBS does not mention this detail. The Guardian provides extensive context on the protests' timeline: September 2023, nationwide spread, deaths in Parliament offices, while SBS offers no additional details beyond the arrests. This story was covered by The Guardian and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Arson attack on Jewish ambulances in London treated as anti-Semitic hate crime. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 4 ambulances belonging to Hatzolah Northwest, a Jewish charity, were set on fire in Golders Green, London, on Monday morning, local time, around 1:45 a.m. The incident occurred near the Matchsyke Hadath Synagogue in Highfield Road, Golders Green, a neighborhood with a large Jewish population. Explosions were caused by oxygen cylinders on the ambulances, breaking windows in an adjacent apartment block and forcing evacuations. Police confirmed no injuries were reported, and the fires were extinguished by 3:06 a.m. with 6 fire engines and 40 firefighters attending. The Metropolitan Police are treating the incident as an anti-Semitic hate crime and counter-terrorism officers are leading the investigation. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 4, ABC, states footage posted on social media appears to show 3 hooded people pouring gasoline on the vehicles, but Article 8, Guardian, notes arrests were made after working around the clock without mentioning social media footage as definitive evidence. Article 1, ABC, and Article 8, Guardian, both mention arrests, but Article 1 states the arrests were made on Wednesday while Article 2, Guardian, clarifies the men were released on bail until April, implying the arrests occurred earlier than initially reported in Article 1. Article 4, ABC, and Article 6, Guardian, both state 3 suspects are believed to be involved, but Article 4 explicitly mentions masked attackers in social media footage, while Article 6 does not reference this footage. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Iran's control of Strait of Hormuz shipping during US-Israel war on Iran. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Strait of Hormuz saw a 95% drop in daily traffic, from ~138 ships day pre-war to ~5-6 ships day, since February 28, 2024, per Joint Maritime Information Center and ABC Lloyd's List. Iran has established a safe corridor near Larak Island, northern Iranian waters, for vessel transit, diverting ships from the central shipping lane, as reported by Lloyd's List and ABC. More than 20 ships have been attacked or suffered near misses in the region since the conflict began, including the Palau-flagged Skylight tanker, Indian crew deaths, per Guardian and ABC. Iran's IRGC has imposed a de facto toll booth system, with at least 2 vessels reportedly paying $2 million, £1.5 million, for transit, per Guardian and ABC, Aladdin Borajerdi's quote. Iran's crude oil exports averaged 1.6 million barrels per day, March 1 to 23, per Tanker Tracker's data cited by ABC and Guardian's reference to Lloyd's List. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports 100 ships exited the Gulf and 40 entered in March, totaling ~138 ships for the month, while ABC states only ~150 ships transited March 1 to 26, including 46 tankers. The Guardian cites Lloyd's List saying no vessels have been damaged since March 22, but ABC does not provide a specific date cutoff for attacks or damages. The Guardian mentions Iran's toll payments were made in Chinese yuan due to US-EU sanctions, while ABC does not specify currency for the $2 million tolls. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian states introduce free public transport amid fuel crisis. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Victoria will offer free public transport, metro, trams, buses, V-Line, statewide for April 2024, starting March 31, 2024, ABC, Newscamau, Thij, Guardian, Article 3. Tasmania will offer free public transport, buses and ferries, statewide from March 30, 2024, until July 1, 2026, ABC, Newscamau, Article 2, Article 4. The fuel crisis is driven by supply shocks in the Middle East, including the US-Israel attack on Iran and Iran blocking the Strait of Hormuz, ABC, Thij, Guardian. Unleaded petrol prices in Melbourne reached approximately $2.50 per litre in March 2024, up from $1.76 a week prior, Thij, Guardian. Victoria's free public transport policy is estimated to cost the government around $79.4 million, ABC, Newscamau, Thij, Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1, SBS, states 4 states ruled out fare-free months, but no other source specifies which states or provides context for this claim. The Guardian mentions that Australians are not yet driving less or using public transport more despite fuel price hikes, while Thieves reports Mickey data showed a 2.3% decrease in weekday touch ONS compared to the previous year, no consensus on usage trends. Article 2, ABC, states Tasmania's free transport policy will last until July 1, 2026, but News Kamau and Guardian do not specify the end date, only that it is until July 1, likely 2024. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, SBS News, and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Stephen Colbert co-writing a new Lord of the Rings film titled Shadow of the Past. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Stephen Colbert is co-writing a new Lord of the Rings film titled The Lord of the Rings, Shadow of the Past with Philippe Boyens and Peter McGee, his son. The film is set 14 years after the events of The Lord of the Rings trilogy, following Sam, Merry, and Pippin as they retrace early steps of their adventure. Sam's daughter, Eleanor, discovers a long-buried secret explaining why the War of the Ring was nearly lost before it began, based on chapters 3 to 8 of The Fellowship of the Ring Star. Peter Jackson is involved in producing the film, having directed the original trilogy and The Hobbit films. The film is the second upcoming Lord of the Rings project after The Lord of the Rings, The Hunt for Gollum directed by Andy Serkis and set for release on December 17, 2027. But not all outlets told the same story. Guardian Article 1 suggests the film will riff on chapters 3 to 8 without adapting them directly, while Guardian Article 3 states Colbert explicitly sought to adapt these chapters into a standalone story. Guardian Article 1 implies the film may center on Tom Bombadil as a plot-critical figure, while Guardian Article 3 does not explicitly confirm Bombadil's role beyond his presence in the early chapters. No source confirms the director of Shadow of the Past though Guardian Article 1 hints at uncertainty, while ABC and Guardian Article 3 do not address this detail. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Donald Trump criticizes Australia and NATO allies over Iran conflict support. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump publicly criticized Australia for its response to the US-Israel war on Iran, calling it not great and stating he was a little surprised by Australia's refusal to assist in securing the Strait of Hormuz, ABC, News Kamau, Guardian. Australia offered to contribute to efforts to protect the Strait of Hormuz but did not send vessels or troops, instead signing a joint statement and sending a surveillance aircraft and missiles to the UAE, ABC, Guardian. Trump accused UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer of offering to send aircraft carriers when the war was over, calling them toys compared to US carriers, ABC, Guardian. Trump claimed Iran was begging to make a deal and presented a 15-point ceasefire proposal, which Iran described as one-sided and unfair, ABC, Guardian. Trump mentioned a mystery present from Iran, 8 boats of oil flying Pakistani flags, as a gesture of goodwill, though Iran has not confirmed this, ABC. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports Trump claimed Iran offered 8 boats of oil as a gesture, but Iran has not confirmed this and The Guardian does not mention it. The Guardian states Australia has done what we have been asked to do, Miles, while ABC and News Kamau imply Trump believes Australia's response was insufficient or delayed. ABC and The Guardian report Trump called UK aircraft carriers toys, but News Kamau does not include this specific comparison. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Rising Australian public anxiety over national security threats and perceived government unpreparedness. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Australian National University's National Security College conducted research based on over 20,000 surveys, November 2024 to February 2026, alongside 480 interviews, 300 meetings, 8 focus groups, and 100 public submissions across Australia. 45% of Australians believe a foreign military attack on Australia is probable within the next 5 years, according to surveys from July 2025 and February 2026. 68% of respondents in July 2025 thought it was more likely than not Australia would be involved in a foreign military conflict in the next 5 years. Concerns about terrorism rose sharply from 55% in late 2024 to 72% in February 2026, following the Bondi Beach terror attack on December 14, 2025. 85 to 89% of respondents identified climate change impacts, AI-enabled attacks, disinformation, foreign interference, economic crises, and supply disruptions as more likely than not to affect Australia in the next 5 years. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian suggests Canberra residents are least worried about terrorism and foreign military attacks, while Newscomau and ABC do not report this demographic distinction. The Guardian implies the ANU report may be used for defence washing to justify military spending, but Newscomau and ABC frame the findings as purely indicative of public anxiety without political motive. The Guardian states one nation's political tactics exploit palpable fear and conflate cohesion with multiculturalism, while Newscomau and ABC do not address this specific political framing. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Democratic victory in Florida State House election flips Trump-backed district. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Emily Gregory, Democrat, defeated John Maples, Republican, in Florida's 87th State House District special election on the 10th of June, 2025, winning by over 2 percentage points, 797 votes. The district includes Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Palm Beach County, where the previous Republican incumbent, Mike Caruso, won by 19 percentage points in 2024. Trump endorsed Maples and voted by mail in the election despite publicly criticizing mail-in voting as fraudulent. Democrats have flipped 29-plus state legislative districts since Trump's 2025 return to office, per Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee claims. The Associated Press called the race for Gregory on the 10th of June, 2025, with a final margin of 2.4 percentage points, ABC Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. Guardian states the previous Republican incumbent won by 19 percentage points in 2024, while ABC claims Trump won the district by 17 points in 2024, likely referring to presidential elections. Guardian reports Trump's mail-in ballot was cast despite early in-person voting ending on the 9th of June, 2025, but ABC does not specify this exact date for early voting cutoff. Guardian mentions 29 districts flipped since Trump's 2025 election, while Guardian 3 states more than 24, vague phrasing. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. ABC staff strike over pay and conditions, BBC replaces programming. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Over 2,000 ABC staff walked off the job for a 24-hour strike on Wednesday, the first in 20 years. ABC's flagship programs including *7.30*, *AM**, *Radio National Breakfast**, *The World Today**, *PM**, and *ABC News Breakfast** were replaced by BBC World Service content during the strike. The strike was called by the Media, Entertainment and Arts Alliance, MEAA, and the Community and Public Sector Union, CPSU, over a 10% total pay rise offer over 3 years, 3.5% in year 1, 3.25% in years 2 to 3. ABC Managing Director Hugh Marks stated staff costs account for 60% of the ABC budget, and the offer was framed as appropriately balanced despite inflation at 3.8% in January. ABC staff voted 60 to 40 against the latest pay offer, with 75% of eligible staff participating in the vote. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the ABC was 395 votes short of acceptance for the draft agreement, while Article 2 does not mention this specific vote shortfall. Article 1 reports Mark's offer was too low and failed to address appraisal processes, career progression, night shift penalties, and reproductive health leave, but Article 2 frames the $1,000 sweetener as putting staff ahead of inflation, 4.4%. Article 2 claims Marks said the strike was not about job security, but Article 1 does not include this specific claim about the strike's framing. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Arrest of Deklin Donnelly in Sydney grandfather's mistaken identity kidnapping and murder case. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Deklin Jake Donnelly, 23, was arrested at a Seven Hills property on March 2024 and charged with murder and detain in company with intent to ransom occasioning bodily harm in relation to Chris Bagsarian's death. Chris Bagsarian, 85, was abducted from his North Ryde home on February 13 and his remains were found near a Pitt Town golf course on February 23. Gerard Andrews, 29, and Daniel Stevens, 24, were arrested and charged with kidnapping and murder of Bagsarian on March 2024 and remain in custody. Donnelly was captured on CCTV at Bagsarian's North Ryde home at the time of the abduction, February 13, and later near an abandoned Dural home where Bagsarian was allegedly tortured. Donnelly was arrested wearing only his underwear at the Seven Hills property and did not apply for bail, remanded in custody to appear in May. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC does not mention Donnelly updating his Facebook profile after Bagsarian's death, while SMH and Newscomau detail this behavior. Newscomau states Donnelly allegedly murdered Bagsarian between the morning of February 13 and 9 p.m. February 14, while ABC and SMH do not specify a timeframe beyond February 13. SMH claims Donnelly was contracted to kidnap Dimitri Stepanyan's father, while ABC and Newscomau do not use the word contracted and focus on mistaken identity without this phrasing. This story was covered by ABC News, news.com.au, and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Meta ordered to pay $375 million in New Mexico child exploitation case. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A New Mexico jury ordered Meta to pay $375 million in civil penalties for violating New Mexico's consumer protection laws under the Unfair Practices Act, 2024. The lawsuit was brought by New Mexico Attorney General Raul Torres's office in December 2023, following a 2-year Guardian investigation, April 2023, revealing Meta's platforms as marketplaces for child sex trafficking. Meta's encryption of Facebook Messenger in 2023 blocked law enforcement access to evidence of child exploitation crimes, including Operation Metafile sting arrests of 3 men preying on children. The trial lasted nearly 7 weeks, with the jury deliberating for about 1 day before ruling against Meta. Meta plans to appeal the verdict and denies wrongdoing, citing challenges in identifying harmful content and investments in child safety features like Instagram teen accounts, 2024. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Meta's encryption of Facebook Messenger blocked law enforcement evidence access, while Meta's statement denies this directly and claims it works hard to keep people safe. The Guardian states Meta's AI moderation generated junk reports overwhelming law enforcement, but Meta's spokesperson denies this, focusing instead on challenges of identifying bad actors. The Guardian cites internal Meta documents and whistleblower testimony, 2021, showing executives knew of harms but ignored warnings, but ABC only references Meta's lawyer's denial of knowingly and intentionally lying. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Victorian Liberal Party pre-selection battle removes Moira Deeming from upper house ticket. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Moira Deeming lost Liberal pre-selection for the Western Metropolitan Region upper house seat in a vote held on Sunday, 2025. Dinesh Gurisetti won the top spot in the Western Metropolitan Region pre-selection with 39 votes, replacing Deeming. Moira Deeming received 26 votes in the pre-selection vote, while Trung Law received 3 votes. Deeming was expelled from the Liberal Party room in 2023 after threatening defamation action against then-leader John Pisutto over Nazi rally allegations. Deeming won a defamation case against Pisutto in December 2024, leading to his leadership loss in late 2024. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports Deeming received 26 votes and Garistani 39, while The Age says other media report slightly different tallies but does not specify what those are. The Guardian mentions Deeming called for ballots to be invalidated and rerun, but ABC and The Age do not mention this specific complaint. ABC states Deeming did not contest for other spots on the ballot, but The Age does not confirm this explicitly. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian bishop appointed to senior Vatican role as Prefect of Dicastery for legislative texts. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Archbishop Anthony Randozzo, 59, from the Catholic Diocese of Broken Bay has been appointed by Pope Leo XIV as Prefect of the Dicastery for legislative texts. Randozzo will relocate to Rome in approximately 3 months after serving as Bishop of Broken Bay since 2019. The Dicastery for legislative texts interprets and ensures correct application of church laws globally for both Latin and Eastern Catholic churches. Randozzo earned qualifications in canon law from the Pontifical Gregorian University and worked at the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith in Rome. Randozzo met Pope Leo XIV in Rome earlier this month, with one source noting he was stranded in Dubai due to the Middle East conflict. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Randozzo will remain in Broken Bay for the next 3 months before relocating, while Newscamau says he will take on the role when he relocates to the Vatican in 3 months, no explicit mention of remaining in Broken Bay. ABC mentions Pope Leo XIV as Pope Leo, without the 14 designation, while Newscamau consistently refers to him as Pope Leo XIV. ABC does not mention Randozzo's parents' background, fruit-vegetable store in Bankstown, or his ecumenism work with the Ordinariate. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Japanese bulk carrier Iron Maiden escapes Strait of Hormuz blockade during Middle East conflict. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Japanese-owned bulk carrier named Iron Maiden escaped through Iran's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz in early March 2024. Iron Maiden was docked in Dubai's Jebel Ali commercial port when the conflict began on February 28, 2024. Iron Maiden departed Dubai on March 2 and sailed through the Strait of Hormuz at night on March 4 to 5, 2024, cutting its tracking signal during the crossing. The ship broadcasted China owner from its transponder while transiting the strait. Iron Maiden stopped in Singapore on March 17 before heading to Western Australia's Kwinana port, arriving on March 22, 2024. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the Iron Maiden is expected to arrive in Kwinana port on Thursday, March 22, while Newscamau does not specify an arrival date but notes it is off Geraldton's coast. ABC reports the Iron Maiden arrived in Australia without cargo, but Newscamau does not mention cargo status. ABC cites US President Donald Trump's administration as negotiating with Iran, while Newscamau does not reference this claim. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Teenage assault on paramedic after stolen car crash in Melbourne. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A stolen Mazda 3 with 4 teenage males collided with a Volkswagen Jetta at Nicholson St and Victoria Parade, Carlton, just before 6 a.m. on Saturday. 2 boys fled the scene immediately after the crash. A 19-year-old man and a 15-year-old boy were injured in the crash and taken to hospital by ambulance. The 15-year-old allegedly assaulted a paramedic during transport to hospital, requiring treatment for their own injuries. The Mazda 3 was stolen from Mulgrave on March 21. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states the 19-year-old assaulted the paramedic, but ABC claims it was the 15-year-old. News Kamau refers to the injured teens as a 19-year-old man and 15-year-old boy, while ABC calls them both teenagers without specifying ages beyond the two on the run. ABC specifies the 19-year-old was seriously injured and the 15-year-old had minor injuries, but News Kamau does not differentiate injury severity. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis.